just like a spark that's breaking out. Can't make a stop, can't turn back now. We know that there's no room for doubt. No, we can't turn back now. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna light it up tonight. We gonna light it up tonight. We gonna light it up just like the sunrise. We gonna light it up now.
Welcome to the HVAC Guide live show where we talk about all things HVAC that no one else is talking about. My name is Josh, and we will be answering your questions live. Sometimes we are joined by other pros in the chat who might know answers to questions that I don't. Tonight, we have a special guest that is an expert in our industry. But before we bring on Kevin, let's take care of a few housekeeping matters. The first thing is, you guys have heard me say it. I've been saying it. I'll say it again. If you are watching this on our main channel, our HVAC Guide for Homeowners YouTube channel, we will not be here for much longer. We're still streaming to both, but the live show, this what you're watching, is going to it has its own home now. We have a new channel. If you are not subscribed to the new channel, please do that. The easiest way to do it is search HVAC Guide Live Show. If you search that on YouTube, it should pop up and you'll be able to click the subscribe button. If you can't find it there, then if you just go to our main channel, so if you go to the HVAC Guide for Homeowners YouTube channel and scroll all the way to the bottom, you should see it there. You should be able to subscribe at the bottom of our channel to the live show channel. Okay. So please make sure you get that done, because you won't be seeing this fat face much longer on the Homeowners channel as far as the live show goes. We're still going to be posting content there, but the show itself has its new home. I'll get off of that. The next thing I just want to highlight is next week we've got another show. I'm here every Tuesday night, and next week we have a guest who is his podcast was nominated for one of the top podcasts in the HVAC industry in the country. And so he's the co-host of the HVAC Misfits podcast, and really smart guy, Ryan. I'm excited to have him on our show next week. So make sure you're here for that. All that said, last but not least, let's take a moment to pay the bills and thank the sponsor of tonight's show.
Daikin Fit is so quiet, you'll definitely notice by not really noticing at all. Save space, save energy, save interruptions. Enjoy the game-changing efficiency of the Daikin Fit. It cools, dehumidifies, and heats so efficiently, it even keeps your energy bills comfortable. Daikin Fit.
All right. Tonight's guest shares the name of another celebrity not as famous as tonight's guest, but I don't want anybody to get confused and about who's joining us. He is the CEO of one of the companies changing the HVAC industry in a big way. That company is called Haven IAQ. Forgive me, Kevin. and they have a product that can help homeowners actually verify if the air they are breathing is clean, or if something needs to be done about it. Right? I feel like a lot of products out there, you're kind of throwing mud on the wall. Sometimes I feel like it's almost placebo effect. Right? Customers will get a better filter, for example, and they'll go, it just feels a little cleaner in here all of a sudden. And so Kevin's awesome product can verify what you're breathing and whether or not it's, maybe Kevin can fill in the blanks, and I'm probably not even saying this correctly, but it's really cool product. He's a co-inventor listed on several patents related to indoor air quality sensing, and was awarded Time Magazine and Popular Science Top Inventions of the Year awards. Most recently, he co-founded a movement called Better HVAC. Everybody, please help me welcome Kevin R. Hart. Let's go. They were
Thank
just
you.
lined up outside,
Wow,
man.
that's really them, huh? Crazy. By the way, I say this is Kevin Hart, the Canadian, not the comedian.
Got it. Okay. The one that's funnier. You're the funnier Kevin Hart.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm the taller one.
So what's going on, man? Thanks for joining us. I know you're doing all kinds of crazy things in our industry. I guess let's dive into that. If you want to talk a little bit about what all you guys do.
Yeah. So Haven IAQ, first of all, if you don't know, IAQ stands for indoor air quality. So what we do fundamentally is we want to clean the air, because we have done enough research and know that sometimes the air isn't clean inside of our spaces. And so, first of all, people don't know. How do we get people to know? We believe that it's got to be tangible. So people need to actually measure and see what's in the air. And typically you can't see what's in the air, There's particles floating around me right now. There's chemicals floating around me right now. I have no idea. I'm just guessing unless I can measure it. And so what we do is we try to make it tangible by sensing particles, chemicals, other contaminants in the air. And in addition to just sensing, we eventually want to do something about it. We want to have solutions. We want to activate the right things to make sure those contaminants aren't affecting our health. That's really what I've been passionate about for the past decade. And yeah, to elaborate on, I guess, what we sense and what we do. So we've been making sensors, first of all. That's our website up there. So 10 years ago, we decided we're going to make a sensor, kind of like a smoke detector. It's going to tell us what's in the air, the physical stuff floating around the air. Like if you're cooking, there's physical stuff floating in the air. We want to know which of those particles can actually get into our lungs, potentially through the barrier of our lungs into our bloodstream and affect our organs, even into the brain, even in through the placenta into a fetus. It's crazy what particle pollution can do if they're small enough particles. And so the problem with the smoke detector is it measures the totality of what's in the air through more like occlusion. Like if I try to shine a light through something, how much light gets through? Well, that's how much stuff is in the air. So that's what we're going to tell you. And they're going to tell you when it's too late. Like you should run out of your home when the smoke detector goes off. We're trying to tell you something a little bit different. We're saying, what is the size of the particles? Can they affect us? Can they affect our health? And we don't want to know when it's too late. We want to know proactively, when this is not good for us and what we can do about it. Can we filter these particles out? So we sense the particles. We built our own particle sensor. As you mentioned, I'm a co-inventor on a laser particle counting or optical particle counting technology that we miniaturized and put into an HVAC system, so you can sense your air quality through the HVAC through the entire home. And then we took chemicals, we took relative humidity. We've really been nerding out into the building science of like, why is there mold in my home, or why are there chemicals building up in my home? And so that's really the path we've been down for the past decade.
Okay. Um, I and it's okay if the answer is no, but I feel like a lot of times when there's these new products or inventions that hit our industry, sometimes there's some pushback from people or pros. Sometimes some of the old timers, the old school guys, Have you had any of that? Have you seen any of that, or is it all love?
Oh no, there's definitely pushback. I'd say a lot of the pros, especially, so I feel like in this industry, a lot of pros are probably aiming towards retirement in the next 5 to 10 years. That's a lot of the industry, particularly because there's not a lot of young people getting into the industry. Not enough. Certainly, there's a shortage of skilled labor in the trades and blue collar work in general. And so, yeah, a lot of the people we deal with, a lot of the owners of companies are typically on the older side where technology is not something they grew up with. It's not something that's sort of native to them in terms of, they weren't a teenager when they had, an iPhone in their hand. They don't know how apps work necessarily as well. It's just not quite as familiar to them. And so they're going to stick with the things that they know that have worked for decades for them. So, yeah, there's definitely a bit of a pushback from that generation. That said, there's exceptions to every rule. There's lots of people in that category who like the product, who use the product, and who adopt technology. But as a stereotype, if we want to go with that, yeah, there is some pushback. Um, then there's people who, when it comes to technology, they don't even want Wi-Fi in their home. They don't want any technology in their home, right? Sort of the Luddites. Or there's also people. Ironically, we deal with people who are sick, but one of the things that makes some people sick is the sort of radio frequency or IMF in the home. And that's, some people see that as wooey, like Ghostbuster stuff, but some people are sensitive to the frequencies um, in the air. And that's a detectable, provable thing. They just happen to be hypersensitive to it, and so they can't have a product like ours due to that. Uh,
Interesting.
yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Huh. Ryan is one of the folks that joins us often, and he sometimes likes to stump me and ask some tough questions. And I love that about him, by the way. But he has a question for you that I think is interesting. So he says, "How do you feel about ionizers and PCOs? And are you more of the or are you just looking at filtering the air? Do you have any opinions on any of that?"
I do. I have a lot of opinions on that, actually.
Okay.
Actually, you said like in the YouTube promo, it said something like unveiling the secrets for homeowners, right? And so I feel like this actually perfectly ties into what I think one of the biggest secrets is, in the IAQ industry, the indoor air quality industry, is that unfortunately, one of the big secrets is that there's many manufacturers making technologies to clean the air that aren't quite doing exactly what they say that they're doing.
Oh,
Um,
shot fired. Got it.
yeah, and so they'll go and look in a tiny little cube of air. Can we sterilize this XYZ COVID mold, whatever, right? And sure, it does, but at the scale of a home, it doesn't quite work the same, and some of the claims aren't as credible as we'd like them to be in practice. Um, and so, I've really boiled down into like I have a philosophy. I've built the mindset around like what do we want to clean the air versus what do we not want to clean the air. And it's a broad sweeping statement, and it doesn't make me a lot of friends. It's a little bit contrarian and controversial to some extent, but I think a lot of the companies who are pushing and promoting certain products are obviously trying to sell their products. Now, one of the things that makes us in a little bit of a neutral zone is that we're not actually selling solutions. We're selling the ability to monitor and control air quality. We're we're sort of agnostic to what the solution is. We don't care what it is. You could put anything in there. We have the data. We know what works. We know what doesn't work. And so one of the things that we've seen. So now Ryan's asking about ionizers and PCO, photocatalytic oxidation. And so these all fall into what I call electronic air cleaners or electronic air purifiers. So they're electronically trying to do chemistry in the air, right? And just in general, the mindset that I have is you don't want to add stuff to the air to clean the air. You want to subtract stuff. Like this is just generally a good philosophy to have is if there's a particle, you want to catch it. You want to subtract it from the home. If there's chemicals, you want to get it outside. You want to get it out of the home. You want to sort of reject it outside, like you want to reject heat molecules outside to cool the home down. Um, if there's humidity, you want to capture it and you want to get it out through the plumbing system. Right. So what these other products try to do is they try to actually claim that, hey, we're going to take this one bad thing and we're going to do some chemistry and turn it into this other thing. Well, that sort of maybe works if everything were just maybe one pure chemical, but that's not what a home is. It's really a cocktail of chemicals where you have uncertain reactions that are going to happen. And so they've actually, scientists, research, and Corbett Lunsford has done one of the best sort of research studies here with the home chem study. And that was sponsored by the Sloan Foundation. And you can find that. That basically they brought in like $1 million spectrometers looking at all the different gases in the air and how they interact. So if you're cooking, depending on what you're doing, it is looking at how those chemicals change. If you're making turkey dinner, how are those chemicals changing and interacting in the air? And it was shocking. Like a lot of the chemicals are interacting. And so one thing they found, for example, you have limonene. Limonene is a lemon scent that they put in like cleaners. Like, you're spraying a cleaner, it's got that lemon scent. So that's limonene, and it's a chemical they add to smell like lemons. Well, that's fairly benign in and of itself. But when it interacts with ozone, it turns into formaldehyde. Now, maybe I'm speaking Greek to a lot of people, but formaldehyde is one of the most carcinogenic chemicals that we know of that's fairly prominent in homes, and it off gases out of materials, typically like drywalls or woods. So it's sort of a natural thing that off gases, but then it gets trapped in our homes. Now, like, we didn't evolve to be in a container of air that never gets exchanged, right? But we're increasingly moving towards that. Why? Because energy efficiency. We want to trap the heating, we want to trap the cooling, we want to make it energy efficient, and we don't want to take that hot, humid air from outside. We don't want that coming through the walls and making mold inside of our walls, condensing on cold surfaces, right? So it makes sense to try to trap all the air inside of our homes. I'm not speaking bad against that, but I am saying one of the consequences of doing this, of trapping the air in our homes, is the chemicals that are off-gassing out of the materials in our homes. It's building up to concentrations that we shouldn't be breathing. And those concentrations, when we breathe them in, it does health damage. And specifically the health damage it can do, endocrine disrupting, hormone disrupting, for the guys out there, testosterone reducing, right? Fertility affecting, carcinogenic. This is like the flame retardant they were putting in pajamas. This is like the drywall issue that they had from the drywall coming from China many, many decades ago, right? So all these things that you hear about, those chemicals, they're in everything. Like, we can't avoid it. They're in the materials. By the way, you might want to ask, like, how do they get in the materials? Why isn't this regulated? Well, the FDA has looked at like maybe 500 chemicals, and out of those 500, they've banned like less than 30 of them, including BPA out of plastics. Okay, great. Well, there's 50,000 chemicals in circulation in commerce. So we've only tested like a very small percentage of the total chemicals that are in commerce. So we don't know. We don't know what's in the materials of the things we're buying. I know I sound like I'm fear mongering, but I mean, seriously, that you can read books about this. I can share the resources with you. You're gonna have to trust me on this. But so there's a lot of chemicals. There's a cocktail of chemicals in the air. I swear I'm gonna get back to Ryan's question. But there's this cocktail of chemicals in the air, and ozone is like an accelerant. So ozone is like accelerating all the reactions between the different chemicals. It's like the thing you don't want in the air. It's really not good. In terms of like, it is going to react with a lot of different things and create even worse chemicals for you. So a lot of these things like photocatalytic oxidation, PCO, where you're shining UV light onto titanium dioxide, there's different hydroxyl radicals. A lot of the chemical interactions that they're aiming for, unfortunately, do sort of like secondary or tertiary chemistry where you didn't expect that to happen, but it does, and it's not good for you. And so there's now a code called UL2998, and it's a standard that UV lights have to comply to, saying that they don't produce ozone. And they still produce a little bit of ozone. Like, these things, they fundamentally will produce some ozone because of the technology and how it works, but they're trying to get it down to zero. And so just in terms of, some people think ozone is okay to breathe. They think it's naturally occurring in the atmosphere. We can talk about that as well. But at the concentrations and trapped inside of homes and the secondary chemistry, we don't want that in our homes. is generally there's multi-hour podcast series that go into the very detailed science on this. And I don't want to force anyone to have to go through what I've gone through, but yeah, please don't add stuff to the air. Please don't do chemistry in your home. And please, pros out there, don't do chemistry in your customers' homes and then walk away. And if you can hear that, my ERV just turned on to ventilate some of the CO2 I'm breathing out.
Nice. Arch asks, does your product oh wait, that's not the question that I had. We were trying to where did his question go? There it is. Does your system filter out plastic? Your product doesn't affect the air at all. It just monitors it, correct?
Yeah. So we monitor what's in the air. We monitor particles in the air. And then when we detect them, we want to filter them. And if we can't filter them, that's sort of like an insight. Like, hey, by the way, you have a lot of stuff in your air that's not ever being filtered out. We can see it's just sort of recirculating around and around. Maybe your filter's not up to the quality, the MERV rating to capture all the particles that are in your home, right? Maybe the MERV rating should, go from an 8 to an 11 or 8 to a 13, whatever. And but this guy Arch, he brings up an interesting question about plastic. So this is like I've really gone deep in this topic recently. So microplastics, super interesting. Like the amount of plastic that we consume is really concerning. Obviously, when you start to look at this, like everything's made of plastic now. It's crazy. Like your water bottles, plastic. Your food containers you're storing your food in are plastic. Even the raw meat, everything you buy from the grocery stores in plastic. Right, the clothes you're wearing are now polyester, nylon. They're plastic. So basically everything's plastic now. Everything we touch, the keyboard I'm touching, the mouse I'm touching, like my chair, everything's plastic. We're constantly touching plastic, and that plastic does get inside of us, either through the food, the water, or just through our skin. But interestingly, I found this out. We're actually breathing those microplastics in as well, and that's something I didn't know until fairly recently. But like, if you have clothes and you put those clothes in the dryer, it sort of like releases some plastics that then get in the air and we're breathing. And there's just generally plastics in the air, and the plastic just sort of degrades over time. And so we're breathing in some level of microplastics. Maybe they settle to the floor and then we're walking on the carpet and they rise up into the air and then we're breathing them in. But yeah, it turns out we're breathing in microplastics. Now, microplastics could definitely be detectable through our sensor. We're sensing the physical stuff in the air. And so, yeah, some portion of just the general stuff in the air are microplastics, and they're made of chemicals. And so just like particles in general are going to do damage, but particles that are also carried with plastic or with chemicals or with the COVID virus or with some other flu or sickness, I mean, that's probably not going to be good. Probably better if you eliminate those things.
Ryan also asks, have y'all looked at radon monitoring at all? Is that something that you may incorporate at some point?
Yeah, actually, I have one right here. It's called the EcoSense. So EcoSense makes this device. The device is called the EcoCube. We don't make it, but we decided, because we're not specific experts in radon monitoring and building radon sensors, we thought, let's just partner with a company. Maybe we'll eventually partner with several companies that make radon sensors, and that pulls into our software so that we can automate and control and see everything all in one place. Radon's great, but they're missing particles and chemicals and everything else, and then they can't control or automate solutions. So we thought it'd be a perfect addition to the sort of ecosystem that we're building out, where you can fully have an automated, healthy home. Because I don't think that it's healthy to be anxious about all this stuff either. And I don't think it's healthy to think about and have to flip dials and control things all the time either. Like, let's just live life, is my theory. And a lot of people, so in the air quality industry, a lot of people are like, we have to stop having pets because pets are bad for air quality, right? They release pet dander and this and that. And we need to stop cooking because cooking's bad for air quality. And we need, here's this list of stuff we should stop doing. All the sources of pollution, like, okay, like before you know it, there's nothing in our homes, right? it's going to be pretty sad life. So my theory is like we should be able to detect and then remediate the stuff happening. Like if we're cooking, something should turn on automatically and just handle those particulates, just filter it out, just ventilate out the chemicals when they start building up. Right? That's the sort of future that we want to live in. And so radon. And sorry, I'm just like rambling, Joshua. If you
No,
want
no,
to get
you're
a word
good.
in,
This
feel
is
free.
great. I'm like, I should have a notepad out. You're a plethora of information.
Yeah, so radon's super interesting because it's the number one cause of lung cancer in people who don't smoke. And so certain homes are built on a foundation of, some earth, like a rock bed of foundation, where that radon, and it's like, I'm gonna butcher this, but there's like radioactive material like uranium, and it breaks down into these small particles, and radon is like when it breaks down and then it gets into the air, and usually that would just sort of dilute into the atmosphere, like it wouldn't be meaningful, right? But when your home is built on a foundation where there's like a slightly larger amount of radon than normal, that radon just kind of gets sucked up into your basement, and it's a little bit heavy, so it kind of sits in your basement and then maybe gets recirculated around. But the radon can just sit in your home, and so people with high radon in their home, they can get very sick. They typically get lung cancer. Unfortunately, some people die of lung cancer, and then there's stories of like families all getting cancer, and then they go and monitor radon and figure out that the home had high radon. So now, like when they build homes, they build in a radon mitigation system. But funnily enough, like they don't connect it together. They're like, go sense radon, and then if you have high radon, then we'll connect it together and we'll put the fan in. Basically, what the fan does is it depressurizes the foundation of the home. So it sucks up the radon from the foundation and shoots it up above the home. And so that gets rid of the radon. So it's not in your home and it's out into the atmosphere where it should be. But super important. Like I know people who are affected by radon, or who, imagine you have a family and you're living in a home and you're going to live in that home for the next few decades and it has radon. Like just go get your radon tested. Like it's not really expensive. I think this device was like $150 or something. But just go get your radon checked. That could save a life. Could save your family's life. So it's my little plug for radon.
Yeah. Radon has been a hot topic. It just randomly came up one night on one of our live shows, and we had a mitigation expert on our show a couple weeks ago. It's been a hot topic all of a sudden. And I admittedly know very little. I live in an area where it's not a very big concern, and it's just not something that I've ever really looked at. But apparently there's some areas where it's a very big concern, and definitely a hot topic. So I appreciate you sharing that. Um,
Yeah, and by the way, just quickly on
sure.
radon, it does change. So, like a lot of people get a single test. If you monitor, like this is a continuous monitor, so it is going to sense not just like one sample. Like some people do like a 1 week test and then that's it. It's good to have a continuous monitor because shockingly, like depending on the season of the year, if not other changes to your home, like opening and closing windows or diurnal cycles, like day and night cycles or weekday cycles, it does change. And so it definitely is better to have a continuous picture. Maybe you don't have to do that. I don't know if it could dramatically change year over year, but I definitely want to get like a seasonal snapshot because my radon was pretty good in the summer because like in my climate zone, we just open our windows. I'm in Vancouver, Canada. We don't have like crazy humidity or crazy heat. It's fairly moderate. So, summer's like 70 to 85 degrees max. We just open our windows most of the time. So I saw radon just plummet
You
through.
lucky fella.
Yeah, well,
And
it's lucky and unlucky because it gave me a totally wrong picture of the rest of the world in terms of.
oh no, yeah. I was just saying
Yeah.
that because I grew up in an area where we would open the windows a lot, and where I live now, we never open the windows. It'll. I mean, I'm not saying never, but it's rare. It's usually hot or cold here. So,
Yeah, and by the way, I
I
see one of the guys in the chat HVAC TV. I think that's Tony. I've
Yeah,
seen Tony on he was on a podcast like Bill Spone's podcast or something. But cool
Tony
guy.
is one of a kind. He's one of the nicest people. He was on our show too.
Nice.
And I think I was on his. And so yeah, he's a really cool guy.
Yeah. More in the commercial world though. So
I know those stinking commercial guys. Ugh, yuck. Um, just real quick, one of the questions that you probably don't care much about, Kevin, is Richard was just basically asking, should he get a whole system if somebody's trying to sell him just the one part? And I think the answer to that question is usually yes. You want to replace it all and have an AHRI match to meet certain standards and warranties and all that good stuff and operation. But there are exceptions to that rule. So I would defer to your local pro on that, and we'll just get off of that. The answer is depends. Uh, so
yeah, I'm
um,
not a expert on that question, unfortunately.
are you into soccer or what other countries call football? Although it's not football. Football is what we call football. But anyway, are you into soccer at all?
You know what? I love soccer. I grew up playing soccer, but for some reason I could never watch it. I don't like and I have been to some big games. I went to Barcelona and watched Camp Nou play. Um really cool experience, but for some reason I'm not a sports watcher. In any sport really, even hockey. I just can't sit in front of a TV. There's just I'll go
You're
out and
one of
I'll
those.
yeah, I like being outside cycling or I don't know, doing something. I just not a sports watcher, unfortunately.
Got it. Got
Gets
it.
me in some trouble
He said
because
that Canada's laying it on Argentina tonight. So
nice,
that's what I was
nice,
saying.
nice.
Let's see. So if a homeowner sees this and they say, "Man, I love Kevin's product. I really want to get that in my home." There's probably exceptions to every rule, but what's that look like typically? If they want the product, how do they go about doing that? Do they need to go to a pro, or how do they do that?
Yeah, so I mean there are homeowner products. You can go buy those as well. So like Air Things makes a IAQ monitor that you can put in your home yourself and plug it in, and it'll sit in your room. And so like I would just say if you're gonna do that, consider where you're gonna put it, or consider having more than one. Because like if you put it in your bedroom versus your kitchen, it's gonna show different data. It's gonna give you different information, and so you probably want to know more holistically. And especially like if you have different floors in your home, or if your home is covered by more than one HVAC system, I mean, just consider that you either need to move that around, or you need to have more than one. Is what I would say. The second thing. So now past the homeowner desktop devices, I'd say we're more on the pro side. So the quality of our product, the accuracy of our sensors is going to be higher. And we're going to go through the pro channel typically. So a contractor is going to install it in your HVAC system. The cool thing about our product is it looks at the whole home air quality, not just a room, but all of the air going through your return duct. So, if you have a couple returns in your home, returning air from different zones of your home or different areas of your home, it's all going to come back through a plenum. And that plenum, we can understand if there's chemicals, if there's particles. It's sort of like a holistic picture of what's happening. And so that's more what we focus on. Then the second thing that's interesting about what we do is we can control solutions like humidifiers, dehumidifiers, motorized dampers for fresh air, and we can control ERVs, energy recovery ventilators, which is a way to exchange outdoor air in an energy efficient way. So yeah, we're more about automation.
Huh. So your product, that's interesting. So it will automatically control some of these other I call them accessories. So I guess like whether we're talking about a ventilation system or a dehumidifier or humidifier, your product can control some of these devices. It's not like it notifies the homeowner and the homeowner needs to go do something. It can just automatically take care of some of these things.
Yeah,
Cool.
exactly. So yeah, what's I A good example would be like, sorry, something in my throat here.
You're good.
We saw that ERVs, so ventilation equipment, they're either set to like a minimum or a maximum airflow, and it's typically a wall dial. So you're gonna dial it like to the lowest flow or the highest flow. Now, we would love to say to a homeowner like, "Hey, your chemicals are high. Go flip the switch." Well, what if that happens like once an hour or 3 times a day? People at some
Yeah.
point are gonna be like, "I don't wanna, run upstairs and flip the switch." So,
Right.
our thought was, and this is the product, by the way, for controlling things. So, that is gonna automatically flip the switch for you. It's going to activate the solution. So you don't have to go run and do it yourself. So let's say like chemicals are high in the home, automatically it's going to turn that piece of equipment either on or up to the highest speed until we can get rid of the chemicals that are built up in the home, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense. I think it's really cool that it just, it's almost like a set it and forget it kind of thing. Set it up and it's going to take care of your air. I did not know that. I thought it was just in monitors. It would alert you, almost like a third party device would, right? So if you did buy one of those things, those monitors you can see get on Amazon, for example, and it says, "Hey, your particulates are high. You need to you need to circulate some air and filter that air," you know, kind of deal. But your product
Yeah,
does more than that, which is really cool.
it does. It does. And we've gotten into like, I would say, some more complicated use cases. And maybe this one would hit close to home. I think you're in North Carolina, if I remember correctly. Um,
Close. I'm in Virginia, but that's okay.
okay, okay.
I won't hold it
So
against you. Tony's in North Carolina. Ugh.
ooh. Okay, so a whole home dehumidifier is typically a great solution, right? Um, but there is an ability to add ventilation to a dehumidifier. It's called a ventilating dehumidifier. But you don't necessarily want that fresh air all the time. You might want to control when that fresh air comes in through a damper. So our controller can control a motorized damper, open, close, depending on when that need for fresh air happens. And then that fresh air is going to go through the dehumidifier and then mix into the rest of the heating and cooling system, the central system, the ductwork, to be distributed throughout the home. And so that is a specific use case where there really was nothing else on the market that could modulate exactly when that ventilation should happen and then therefore open the damper.
Great.
Now, another interesting thing we can do on top of that is say, well, we don't want to activate the compressor of the dehumidifier just because I want fresh air, right? But I could just call for the fan on the dehumidifier, open up the motorized damper. Now I basically have a powered ventilator. So I've turned my whole home dehumidifier into a powered ventilator that can give me fresh air. And then some of these dehumidifiers have pretty good filters. They have MERV 13 filters, at least the Santa Fe units. I think the April Air, maybe not quite a MERV 13, but they have filters. So they're helping with all three, what we consider to be the pillars of indoor air quality, which is your humidity control, filtration, and ventilation. It can do all three. So that's a pretty cool product. But controlling it to do all three of those things in a sort of efficient way, that was a very niche use case that nobody else was covering. But we can specifically activate it for those use cases.
Interesting. I sent you a little message in the private chat. If you could peek at that, I just want to make sure before I step on any toes that it's okay to say certain things. That said, if you had a customer, or if you had your own mother, let's just say that, and she said, "Kevin, I want your product. I want to put that in my home, but what else should I add to my home?" Right? I'm not saying we need to pick any fights with any particular products, but you know, what would you say to mom? Put these products in your home. in addition to my product to get the best air possible? What's the Swiss Army knife here, if you will?
Yeah, yeah. Well, we try not to be too brand driven. To be frank, like if you have a good filter and it's meeting the MERV rating and you're changing it on time, I don't care what brand, of filter that is, personally. We do see what's popular, and what seems to work. And so like definitely there's brands like April Air that seem to make pretty good solutions that cover the whole gamut of filtration, ventilation, and humidity control. I would say to people like have those three things or consider
I call them the
consider
big three. That's the
yeah.
I call those the big three. There's some other cool products out there. I actually do. Only because I've seen what UV lights can do. I know you touched on that and how maybe some of the products aren't necessarily, but I've had some evaporator coils that we put ultraviolet technology UV lights on there and saw the before and after. But aside from that, I call those the big three, right? Humidity control, ventilation, and filtration, right?
Yeah, yeah. So like let's address UV quickly. There's nothing wrong with UV, right? Except some people claim that UV is going to kill everything, through the air and, cure cancer. So the concept that the
Andrew
concept that UV is going to kill stuff in the air, like, a particle is floating through the air at, I don't know, 5 meters per second, or hundreds of feet per minute, so it's going fast. Like if you imagine, like it's probably faster than you can run. So this air is moving fast, and this little UV light, which is powered out of like your usual outlet, is just gonna like zap everything and kill everything and clean the air 100%. Like everything's dead. There's no chemicals. There's no particles left. Like it's definitely an overblown claim that a lot of people claim. They claim this like on the fly killing UV light. Now, to be fair, like where they got that was from the hospital sort of market industry, where they would have super high power UV in long laminar return ducts or supply ducts that would be like many, many, many tens of feet, where they could stack multiple of these UV lights. So the exposure to UV, like what matters is the power of the UV bulb cumulatively that it's encountering through its travel. And air is moving really slow in those big ducts, right? So you've got very slow moving air across very high power UV, and you can start to kill stuff, right? But where UV is most applicable in residential, in my opinion, is whatever's line of sight it's going to kill. So if you've got like mold growing on the coil and you can shine that UV right on that spot, it's probably going to kill that, which is probably a good thing, right? So I do think there's a time and a place for UV. Um, Now that said, like I would challenge that if there's budget for it, why is that mold growing on the coil?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got water, but like we need something else to create mold. We need some sort of food source. So there's some contaminant getting on the coil, right? And that contaminant's probably the stuff in the air, like the particles that are flying and landing on that coil, and then it's getting wet, and then it's sitting there, and it's turning it into mold. So my question would be like, how good is your filter? And then is the filter properly gasketed, and is the ductwork relatively sealed between the filter and the coil? And if you can say yes to all of those things, I highly doubt you have a lot of mold on your coil. But that is a little higher budget than just throwing a UV bulb and calling it a day. But that would be like an example of where UV is a good way to solve a problem, but it's maybe not 100% the root cause of the problem.
Yeah. Yep. I my biggest story so when I first started my heating and air business, the guy I learned under years ago would always say uh that they're snake oil. He's like, they don't do what they claim they do, all that stuff. He wouldn't sell them. He didn't believe in them, right? He was that old school thinking. And I had a customer that had one of those old Ream M coils with all the nooks and crannies. And we got there and I did my best to clean it with it in place. We never did the pull it out, take it outside, and do all that. But because then you're reclaiming refrigerant, you're doing all kinds of things. And so anyway, I sold my first ever UV light to this guy, and we went back 6 months later to do his PM, and the coil. I mean, I was floored. Like I was like, I remember going through the house, Mr. Cohen, come look at this coil. It's shiny as a nickel, and it changed my whole philosophy on those. Ryan has another one for you. He wants to know if your product will work with non-communicating systems and or communicating systems.
Yeah. So listen, the monitor. So this is, if you can see it here, this is the monitor product. So that is collecting data, and that data could be collected on any system, communicating or non-communicating. It doesn't matter, right? It can be installed. It just has to be forced air, central air, right? We can't install that in a ductless or something that's not really moving the air through ductwork. So the monitor can work with any system. The controller, so it does have to work with the 24-volt system if you got a communicating system. Now, the answer is also it depends. I have found that some communicating systems do have a way to activate the 24-volt controls. So if you open up your HVAC, your furnace, and you get to the control board, and you will see like these terminals that say like G and R and C and W and Y, and it's the same stuff you'd see up on the thermostat. You can connect it to like the G and the R, and that will turn the fan on without the heating, without the cooling. It'll just turn the fan on. And we like to control that relay because it's going to move the air through our product, and it's going to circulate the air through the filter. It's going to make sure the home's not stagnant. We don't want sick building syndrome is when the air is just stagnant for long periods of time, right? So we want to circulate. We want to dilute the chemicals. The chemicals might be coming from one room, but if you can dilute them through the whole home, then on average, you're breathing better air. And so there's a lot of things we want to do controlling the fan of the air handler. And we can't do that on some communicating systems. And in those cases, like in the case where we do some work with big OEM HVAC manufacturers and thermostat manufacturers, we try to create an API, a software connection where we can still work with those products. We have a if this then that. And so like Lennox iComfort and other Ecobee, other thermostats are on the IFTTT, so you can still connect those things together. But yeah, we're trying to work with both, but unfortunately you're gonna encounter some communicating systems where we just can't talk to the control board.
So you guys, I know we were messaging back and forth, and there's certain things we can and can't say on this front, but you guys, I think it's safe to say you work with multiple manufacturers of HVAC products and their air monitoring abilities with their communicating systems. Is that okay to say?
Yeah, okay. We do. Yep.
Wink,
Yes.
Well, let's take a moment, man. We've been flying through this show. We're getting into the wee minutes. I've been saying we a lot. I did a video the other day where I said we're in the wee hours, and my wife was making fun of me. So
better than saying me a lot. That'd be very self-centered.
So we're in the wee minutes. We're going to be getting towards the end of our show very, very soon, and I wanted to do a segment that I like to do called Goofy Inventions. So we're going to do that now. So Kevin, you said you do have a goofy invention to share with us, an actual inventor, someone that has his name on patents in this world. Let's hear your goofy invention for the HVAC God live show.
Okay. So hear me out. It's simple, but it's powerful. Bed suspenders. Okay, so I'll elaborate.
Okay. Please do. Yeah. Okay.
So I got really into like, how do you sleep better? I wear this ring that like tracks how well I sleep and looks at body temperature and deep sleep and REM sleep and all this stuff. So I've tried a lot of wacky stuff, how to sleep better. I have this thing called the bed jet, and it like blows air into the sheets. So that like humidity doesn't build up, and it can
Do
keep
you
your
like that?
temperature.
I've seen those. I've never
Yeah,
used one. Okay.
I love it. Like, I couldn't
Okay.
go back. I used to get night sweats, so I mean, it's been amazing. But I've tried a lot of different stuff like blackout blinds, and yeah, I've tried everything. So just one of my fascinations is like, for 7, 8 hours a day, you're just lying there. Like, might as well make the most of it and feel recharged in the morning. So this is not 100% gonna change your life, but there was this invention, and it was like to keep the fitted sheet on the bed. So there was
Okay.
like these it was like these straps that go
Yep.
underneath the bed, and they just like clip onto the fitted sheet so that the fitted sheet doesn't go anywhere. And that was great, and like not many people know about that. Not many people have that problem. But then I thought, like, what if I actually attach this to like the actual top sheet or the duvet? And so I tried
Ah.
that, and now like the bed sort of hugs you, and you never have to make your sheets again because they always stay in place. And
So
it's
you
just
have this. This
I did.
isn't a
Yeah, well, it's like I haven't brought it to market. I haven't told it. This is the first time I've even talked about this because it's just so goofy. But you can like buy these straps on Amazon and just use them and invent your own like thing with me here. And it goes under the mattress, but then you like clip it to your top sheet so that you don't have to like make your bed every day, and like your partner's pulling the sheets off of you, but these straps are gonna have your back. They're gonna like keep the
Yeah.
sheets on your side.
I love
So
it, man.
yeah.
That might be one of the coolest goofy inventions anyone has shared with us. Um, it reminds me of years ago. Um, I so you know years ago I was trying to figure out what I want to do with my life, and one of my hobbies for the longest time was refereeing basketball. And one of the problems I had was, you're constantly doing this. You're raising your hand during, you make a call and you've got to put your hand up and call a foul or a violation during the game. And I was constantly doing that, and every time I would, my shirt would come untucked. And so they make these straps that go through your pants. They're like suspenders. They connect to your socks. So every time you do this, your socks pull up, but then when you drop your arms back down, your socks then pull your shirt back into your pants and it stays
Well,
tucked.
yeah,
And
that's similar.
yeah, so that as you were telling that story, that's the first thing that came to mind. But no,
I
that
love it.
might be one of the best goofy inventions we've heard.
Well, thanks. That's
Were
what
you
I'm here
gonna
for.
say something else?
No, no. I just said I
Oh,
love it.
okay. Um, let's let's do this. So let's see, I'm looking at our time. So we got a time for a couple more questions. If you guys have any questions for Kevin, feel free to drop that in there. What's the biggest misconception or mistake you see folks making on the indoor air quality front or with your product specifically, maybe?
Yeah. Biggest misconception. Hmm. I feel like we probably touched on just like everyone wants to talk about the additive stuff, the electronic air cleaners, all that technology. You don't need it. I call them I liken it to supplements. Like in the fitness industry, it's like, okay, we know what we need to do, right? We know we need to eat right, we need to exercise, we need to hydrate. Like we know those are the things that are going to keep us healthy. But what do we want to do? We want to like go buy creatine and vitamins and all sorts of wacky stuff that promise that we're gonna do more strength or lose more weight or whatever. But like at the end of the day, if you like I'm in the cycling world, and people always want to spend thousands of dollars to get less weight on their bike, like go from a aluminum frame to a carbon frame, and it's like you look at the person, you're like, you could probably shed a few pounds for a lot less than that and probably save money without spending thousands and thousands on this carbon frame. And so I think it just do the work, and the work is the fundamental thing. Is it's the pillars in the fitness world, and I think it's the same in the IQ world. It's ventilation, filtration, and humidity control, and all the other stuff. Maybe they help. Maybe there's a benefit for them in some use cases when installed by a professional who really cares about this topic and has done some research. Um, but cover the fundamentals first. Don't like ignore the fundamentals and just go straight to the supplements.
Yeah. Source control. That's another one we didn't touch on, right? I mean, if you have an issue, find out. You kind of mentioned it when you said mold on your coil. Why is the mold there? A lot of folks will, try to come up with solutions or things to alleviate the problem when they, don't always go to the source to start with. Like, why are we even having this problem? Let's figure that out.
Yeah.
Um, Hart
There's another
says,
good question. Yeah.
I'm going to hold that question. You talking about Ryan's question?
Yeah.
Yeah, don't answer that yet.
Okay.
we're going to hold on to that one. That's an interesting, because I assume you have an opinion on that matter.
I do, but yeah, it's a spicy topic.
Okay, perfect. That's perfect. So we've got a spicy topic question that we're going to land the plane, if you will, with this show in just a moment. That said, we've talked about it before on our show. We end our show almost every week the same way, and that is we share all kinds of stories about some of the bad apples, right? We know there's some bad actors, some bad apples, some people that are maybe not the best in our industry, maybe not making us look good, right? And so we talk about them all the time. And what we don't talk about enough is some of those good apples. So if you know a good apple, if you know a good heating and air company, a good electrician, a good plumber, do me a favor and share who they are and where they're located in the chat. First of all, you're going to be sharing some love to some good apples. But the other thing you might do is you might actually share more than that. Somebody might see your message in your area and show some more than love, give those folks some business. So drop those into the chat. That said, this spicy topic that Kevin called it, I like the way you referred that. And let's jump on Ryan's question. So he says, are you on the side of running the fan blower constantly or just leaving it on auto for air filtering? I hear both sides all the time.
Yeah, I hear both sides all the time as well. And I think there's so many variables impacting this. It's a super interesting topic. Um, in a hot and humid climate, you can definitely do damage by leaving it on if your air handler is in a hot attic, right? That's not an encapsulated attic. So it's an attic that's exposed to that hot and humid air. And the duct work has duct leakage, meaning that you could potentially be pulling in some of that hot and humid air into your ductwork while the system is under pressure, which it would be while the fan is on. And so that's actually going to make your air quality worse. It's going to drive heat and humidity into your system. That's not good. Now, there is sort of a movement of homes encapsulating their attic. So the attic basically becomes a conditioned space like the rest of the home. Um, there's also a movement of people who are doing really good air sealing of ductwork using AeroSeal or lots of mastic or other means, but they're even measuring the air leakage of the ductwork using duct blasters and other technologies. Um, and so I do think in an ideal world, you could run the fan constantly and you would then filter a lot of air. You'd get the particles out, you'd dilute and circulate the air. Like, it would be a great tool for the indoor air quality of your home to be able to circulate the air. But unfortunately, due to how the HVAC is set up and how it's installed, in the majority of cases, it's probably not a good idea to leave it on. And I hate to say that because I'm in the IAQ industry, and that's one of our greatest tools is to be able to move the air. So that's kind of the quick answer to that question. I will
I've
say
seen that.
with our, I'll just say real quick, with our product, we're gonna sense when the best time is to activate the fan. Because there's a lot of stuff in the air, and that's typically fairly short. Could be like 30 minutes or something. I was just cooking, and bam, it turns on for 30 minutes. So yeah, you might not be getting the best there because it's a bit hot and humid outside, but at least you've limited that to the 30 minutes where you needed it. And by the way, there's this totally separate topic rabbit hole here where you go down into like, are you re-evaporating the moisture off of the evaporator coil, and it's a whole rabbit hole that you can go down.
Yeah, I've actually seen that. That's what I was just about to say is I've seen homes with the extended fan run time or just the fan left on all the time, and the evaporator coil does its job. It removes some humidity, and then it literally the humidity go back up when the outdoor unit turns off. Now you could argue, well, it's going back up partly because the system's not running at that very moment, but I don't think it's going to affect it that much. I think you could genuinely make an argument that especially if, those systems that maybe it's not pitched quite as well and it's not draining out as good as it could. And all the other arguments that are out there with static pressures on the ductwork so it doesn't drain very well and all these different things, right?
This
Anyway.
is a very complicated, topic. It's a complicated industry. I think homeowners maybe like me as sort of like somebody outside of the industry getting in the industry is like, wow, you need like an engineering degree. You need the amount of complexity in this industry is incredible. And IAQ just amplifies that complexity because you're sitting on top of the HVAC. And so like I have a lot of empathy for the fact that like not everybody signed up for that level of like complexity and sophistication. Not everyone's sitting there with an engineering degree with their trade ticket doing HVAC work and expecting to have to consider all these trade-offs. Some of the people in the building science world or the home performance world, they're like really diving into research papers and conducting experiments and like, well, how much water evaporates off the coil? And is it meaningful? And well, what's the CFM per ton? And could we improve the airflow or tune the airflow, slow the airflow down to get more dehumidification? Like, is the system oversized? Is it a 5-ton unit when it should have been a 3-ton unit? Right. So all these things are going to drive like, okay, I have a lot of latent capacity to take out this humidity and I want better air quality. So, God damn it, I'm going to get better air quality and I'll re-evaporate a little bit of moisture, but overall I can easily dehumidify again. It's not like you undo all of your work. If you a lot of it still came down, dripped into the drain pan and came out the plumbing. So it's not like you lost everything. You just lost what was physically sitting on the coil at the time. And the science of that is super interesting. Like the coil's cold and water condenses on it. But then like when the system, the refrigeration stops flowing and that coil starts warming up, the water doesn't want to sit on that. It's not attracted to that cold surface anymore. And then the only other ingredient you need, like a hair dryer, you got heat and you got air movement. When you flow air across that and it doesn't want to sit on that coil anymore because it's not cold, there's no attraction anymore. You blow that water off. So it's not going to drip down necessarily. It may over time, but now if you're flowing air across, it's going to re-evaporate into the air. Right. So that's just the water that was sitting on the coil at the time when the system shut off. But all the previous water did drain down. And it takes about 14 minutes, the studies show, for the coil to get cold enough when you have a call for air conditioning to start really effectively dehumidifying. And so when you have an oversized system that's short cycling, you never get to that sort of 14, 15 mark. So you're not getting good dehumidification. So anyways, there's like rabbit holes you can go down.
No, I actually appreciate you saying that because I get comments on our channel sometimes and I usually just ignore them, but I'll get homeowners, especially the ones that argue for the DIY side of things. And that's fine if that's how they feel. Um, and I'm not saying there aren't things that a homeowner can't do themselves. I've never said that, right? At the same time, when I get these comments like, "Oh, it's not as complicated as y'all act like it is." And I'm like, "I've been doing this for 2 decades and I know I don't know everything. Like I have so much to learn." I was just actually that's why I was laughing. I messaged Tony earlier in the show because he and I had a conversation today about a whole nother rabbit hole when it concerns constant CFM motors and all that fun stuff. So it's just, I think it's a little ignorant to say, "Oh, your industry is not that complicated." I'm like, okay, what's latent capacity? Of a thing you just threw out there nonchalantly. What's latent capacity without Googling it, Mr. Homeowner, And anyway, I'm getting on my high horse now, but I think it is a very complicated industry and there are some ins and outs and there are times when you can argue both sides of things, especially with indoor air quality, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, People like simplicity, right? And people do HVAC like politics. It's like there's one of two sides that you can choose, and then you sort of just defend that side. But like that's not how this industry works. Everything's really nuanced, and there's a lot of detail and information and variables to consider. And so, like, yeah, maybe you could do some stuff yourself, but yeah, the rabbit hole's so deep that what you're paying for is like the many tens of thousands of hours of knowledge of like what didn't work and what worked, and hopefully you work with someone who cares and who's learning, right? There's people who've got 1 year of experience 30 times over, 30 years in the industry, and then there's people who truly have 30 years of experience. So work with the right one, but you're sort of paying for that experience as well, right?
Yep. Good point. Any parting words? We're gonna wrap up in just a moment. Anything else you want to just kind of make sure you get covered before we wrap up?
The only thing is our website is haveniaq.com. That's where you can find us.
I like it. Good enough. Again, for those of you that are still here, thanks for joining us. I'll be back next Tuesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. We'll have a guest, Ryan Hughes, one of the top podcasters in the HVAC industry, really smart guy. Is going to be joining us. And again, if you're not subscribed to the new channel where we're moving the live show to, make sure you get subscribed to the HVAC Guide live show YouTube channel, or you won't see this fat face much longer. So again, thanks, Kevin. Thanks to everyone watching. In the meantime, make it a great week. Take care.